The concept of social disorganization was created by theorists Clifford Shaw and Henry Mackay. The concept of social disorganization was created in 1942. Though Mackay and Shaw were not the first to note this theory of social disorganization, as it was first introduced in the investigations of Thomas. Thomas's studies or investigation were primarily based off the influence of interaction of people's behaviors and situation on the process of a person, though Mackay and Shaw were the ones who definitively created the theory within their research. Data of their research was exhibited through the United States Census and a variety of records of those neighborhoods, with high crime rates of poverty, physical dilapidation, and a high cultural mix. It must be noted that these were the neighborhoods with the highest rates of delinquency and crimes. Before Mackay and Shaw had collaborated on the theory, Shaw had worked on the macro level of crime rates, and previous to that, on the micro level. The primary basis of this theory was the fact that a person's physical and social environments are predominantly responsible for the behavioral choices that each individual makes. This means that instead of their personalities playing a role into how prone a person is to commit a crime, it has been determined that where you live has a stronger influence. The theory in general is based upon the large assumption that, quote, certain neighborhoods in all cities have more crimes than other parts of that same city, end quote, and a large percentage of them were located in the Burgess Zone too. Shaw and Mackay had discovered that residential locations that were becoming invaded by factories and companies had a higher delinquency rate. It was also determined that it did not matter which ethnic groups resided in Zone 2, otherwise known as the transition zone, because there was still a high rate of delinquency no matter the ethnic group. Though as soon as most of that ethnic group had moved out from the transition zone, or Zone 2, there was a significant drop in their delinquency. Additionally, the concept of social disorganization is primarily used to determine or predict as to where different types of crimes are more likely to occur throughout the different types of neighborhoods, in which Mackay and Shaw had determined that in order to determine where crimes are most prevalent, there are three determining main factors. These three determining main factors include the citizens have different ethnic backgrounds, it's a poverty-stricken area, and the health conditions of the area are deemed unstable. Overall, it has been deemed by Shaw and Mackay that crimes were not a result of personal behavior or reflection of the person. Rather, it was the fault of a collection of people within the neighborhood. The crime was also viewed as a response to the poor conditions in which these people live in. There are four main forms of social disorganization that are viewed: the lack of control for immigration, social factors, the lack of control within the community, and neighborhoods that are deemed disadvantaged. When taking a look at how social disorganization is seen in uncontrolled immigration, it can be first noted that a significant amount of immigrants arrive to the neighborhoods that are deemed disadvantaged. Of these immigrants arriving, a large amount of them arrive poverty-stricken as well and do not speak the language. As a result, this leads to turmoil within the locals and the inability to communicate properly. On a similar note, social factors come hand in hand with disorganization. While the lack of control in the community, comes a large sense of disorder, as it is vital for a neighborhood to have control in order to properly function. Similarly, when there is no organization, this results in the older children governing the younger children and guiding them. When the older children guide the younger children in these types of communities, the older children tend to teach the younger children criminal behavior. Additionally, these older children create what is deemed a, quote, stable environment with order for the young child to follow, so they are inclined to follow it since it has order. On a final note, neighborhoods that are deemed disadvantaged have a higher crime rate and have a, quote, development of criminal values within these sub-societies, end quote. Similarly, it can be noted that within the theory of social disorganization, there are 5 aspects that lead to the social disorganization, in turn leading to criminal behavior. These 5 aspects include poverty, cultural mix, physical dilapidation, high mobility in residence, and other social aspects such as high infant mortality. Hence, it was determined by McKay and Shaw that residents of the neighborhood that have a high poverty rate and a culturally mixed residents in dilapidated areas were unable to unite to solve the community problems. One of these problems include delinquency amongst the youth of that neighborhood and the inability to choose what's best for the neighborhood. It must be noted that the prevalence and frequency of social ills overlap with a higher delinquency rate. In this instance, social ills are low birth weights, poverty, or disease. Additionally, it can be noted that no matter what the high rates of social problems are almost always clustered in the zones of transition. Within these areas of transition, it can be seen that informal social controls were broken down, that younger children learned criminal-based norms through the playing of local children. In turn, the breaking down of these conditions leading to social disorganization. This social disorganization, as a result, leads to lawbreakers learning activities that are criminal from those that are older than them and live in their neighborhood. On a contrasting note, there have been concerns noted regarding the social disorganization theory, as experts have claimed that the theory original research of the Shaw and McKay did not accurately measure social disorganization. It was also criticized that the theory focused on the macro level of theory places. Similarly, it had been noted that the theory fails to provide an explanation to why young people in what are deemed as good neighborhoods with low poverty rates still commit crimes. It must be noted that the invasions of factories and businesses were not addressed within the theory because they were financial and political concerns associated, as they were being financed by these invading factories and companies. A real-life example of social disorganization theory is the city of Chicago within the 1800s and the early 1900s, in which during this time Chicago was the fastest expanding city in the United States. During this time, cities in the United States had no formal form of agencies such as police officers, community leaders, and garbage disposals. Hence, the communities were given the responsibility of solving any problems on their own in any way that they deemed fit. Though the issue was that Chicago consisted primarily of a large amount of immigrants, specifically 70%, with 30% being naturally born Americans, who all had different languages and different cultural values and beliefs. Due to not only the cultural barrier, but the language barrier, there was a lack of organization to solve issues within the community, leading to mass chaos. Since the creation of the social disorganization theory, it has been used to assist the government and law enforcement policymakers to make decisions that are deemed informed through the use of evidence. This evidence is significant as it is used in order to strategize plans in order to prevent crimes in, quote, disadvantaged communities, end quote. Today's research has supported the model provided by McKay and Shaw that detailed that there are a high level of crime rates in neighborhoods that are disorganized. Overall, the findings of McKay and Shaw research had rejected social Darwinism. This is due to the fact that culture is not influential in crimes and delinquency. Rather, it's a criminogenic nature. No matter what ethnic or racial group that resided in the area, Zone 2, it did not affect delinquency. Rather, it was the Zone 2 that affected the delinquency rates within this area. The concept of social disorganization was created by theorist Clifford Shaw